Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another animation analysis video, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a different type of animation analysis today. I'm not sure if I'll do more of these going forward. I'm going to use this video to kind of gauge the audience's reaction, aka you, the viewer. Yes, you, I'm looking at you watching this video on your phone. Your interaction with this video and of course all of the support that you give it will determine, I suppose, if we decide to do more of these support memory animations in the future. But I thought that these would be interesting to take a look at, because not only is this not something that I have done for a animation analysis video before, but this is something that I wanted to do for these two new support memories specifically, because not only are they some of the longest ones that we have, especially Cells. Cells is almost like 30 seconds long, which is pretty crazy. I'm really glad that these have a skip button. I want to watch them a couple times, but in stuff like, you know, History of Epic Battles, which is just what these came out with, the Cell and Gohan stages, I don't want to see this every single fight. I have to wait 30 seconds before I jump into the action, right? I want to just go, go, go. So, we are going to be taking a look at these two today. Of course, the one with Cell and the one with Gohan as well. Obviously, since these are so short, I figured I would put them both in one video. I could probably do an individual video on the both of them, to be honest with you. But I figured that because it is just a support memory animation, and both of these are like 24 and 21 seconds long, we would just put them into one video. So let me know if you guys enjoy this video. Of course, leave a like, all that funny YouTube stuff. As I do like to say in front of all of these animation analysis videos, I am not an expert by any means. I'm not a professional animator or anything like that. I just do these videos for fun because I enjoy them, and I have a good idea of what makes a good a Dokkan animation in my mind anyway. And of course, looking at all the assets, I understand how all this stuff is put together. Now, the other thing that we do want to go over real quick before we get into the animations, and I know that this is already running a little bit long for the intro, but with the support memory animations, we are certainly not going to be viewing them with the same lens that we are going to be viewing the regular animations that we take a look at. You guys know that I like to sort of temper my expectations, or at least kind of have a little bit of a different expectation going in with some of the old animations, but obviously support memory animations are not the same amount of fluidity, and obviously don't have the same amount of quality all the time. Or I guess maybe that's not the right word. Maybe it's just like they tend to, you know, cut corners in places where they should be cut, because obviously this is supposed to be a quick animation that plays before you jump into the fight, not a whole super attack animation. So keep that in mind as we're jumping into this. We're going to start with Cell's animation here. Of course, as per usual, we start by watching this one time through first, and I gotta say, I think this one is actually really cool. These always make me wish that these were voiced, because it's so funny to me that for some essays they don't do lip flaps. For most active skills nowadays they do, but for like every support memory that I've seen practically, like there's a few that they don't have lip flaps. Most of them do though, but there's no audio for this. The character is just talking, which is really interesting. So first of all, I have to say, as we start off with Cell, and we'll go through Gohan's, by the way, we'll watch it one time through on normal speed. When we go to his, we'll take a look at Cell's first, right? With this, I really like the transition that they do here. So obviously they always have the support memory pop up on screen with the film sort of come around in the background. And this is a really cool transition where it glows and then they have the TV screen kind of pop up, right? And then transition into the actual TV. I actually like that a lot, because sometimes the support memories just kind of glow and then fade from white, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think this is a more interesting transition than some of the other ones they did. Now, I really like the effect that they have on this, where they have sort of like the TV static, or it's almost like if you're watching this on an RCA TV. Gosh, are some of you not old enough to know what that means? Basically a TV that doesn't support HDMI. The funny red, yellow, and white cables, right? A TV like that, right? A non-HD TV where if you were recording it, right, you would be maybe seeing this type of stuff on the screen. And obviously in Dragon Ball, when the characters watch TV, they sort of represent it a lot by having this sort of static effect on the screen. I like it, even though it is basically just some squares, essentially, right? You can see that it is basically just a bunch of rectangles on the screen. I quite like this a lot, actually. I think it's a pretty neat little effect. Now, obviously, you have Cell talk. I will say the only weird thing about his lip flaps is that he doesn't actually open his mouth, right? When he has this quote-unquote open mouth pose, it's his teeth that are just showing. So, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me that that's what they decided to do. I'm sure they're taking from the source material, but it just kind of looks a little bit funny with him basically just like grinning over and over, essentially. Now, the little zoom in, and I do like this transition quite a bit, actually, where they have, of course, the TV kind of like get a little bit distorted, and all they do is basically use a little bit of editing magic to kind of have these little swipes to the side, right, to kind of distort Cell to the side. There is a tool that you can use to do this quite easily in Photoshop, so I almost wonder if they did this manually or if they like had a specific way. I'm sure they probably just tried to copy it from the anime. But I do like this a lot. Obviously, you have this little effect where Cell is sort of, you know, morphing a little bit here. And they kind of have this flash in and out. It's basically the same like shape, right, as you can see right here, and then for the one that was just there, right, it's not really much different. I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same, in fact, but it gives off the same effect. And then I do like this, that obviously the whole idea here is that it's zooming in, and now you're actually in the scene, right, like you're in the studio with Cell, right, and shot in front of a live studio audience. And then to kind of nail it home with the transition, they still have a little bit of that TV static on the screen before it finally disappears and you have Cell in proper color rather than the little bit of distorted color from the TV. I quite like that little addition there. It makes this scene flow a lot, and it makes this transition pretty good, right? It's very simple. It's basically just Cell framed this way for the entire first section, but it's definitely very, very nice. I like it a lot. So obviously we have Cell talk for a little bit more here, and then we zoom out, which I actually like that, you know, instead of just doing a cut to this, right, they actually bothered to zoom out, which is really nice because they definitely didn't have to do that, but it's cool, right? This shot of Cell looks very nice, obviously in front of the network logo and the globe in the back, with Cell talking about, of course, introducing the Cell games and that everybody has a week to prepare. And then we have the transition into this pose where Cell is like, well, let me show you what I mean by destroy the world. So this is a very quick jump in the pose, right? When he goes from here to here. However, I think this works just fine because in my mind, this flows when I watch it. And I think it also helps that even though it is just bam, this quick transition, right? You have this slide, and as the screen is sliding, you have Cell lifting up his arm like this, right? Even though it is just a little bit, right? You can see it's basically just 2 frames. I think that kind of drives home the pose being a little bit more fluid, and obviously as the camera keeps panning, he moves his hand back to point at the globe, right? I think that really sends that transition home, and it looks good. Then, of course, we have this effect, which looks really great with obviously Cell's key shining against the wall first, right, with these little bits of red in there, which is pretty cool. Nice little touch. Obviously, the lighting on Cell looks very nice, right? The light sort of reflecting off the wall looks really good. Definitely a fan of that. And, of course, we have the explosion out, which looks great. I love the way that the key is animated. This little whoa kind of effect is really cool. But I really like the way that the key shoots out of the building. It feels a lot more natural than just like beam, you know? It actually feels like energy that is being thrown from the building, right? The explosion outward, and then a lot more of a natural key blast, excuse me, with even a little bit of like dissipation. Is that a real word? It is now. With a little bit of like the key dissipating at the end here, right? As it sort of goes off screen. Fantastic. I absolutely love it. And then, of course, we have this shot where Cell is standing there now with the smoke in the background, right? Talking about how, of course, this will be the case if no one stands up against me, yada, yada, yada. But I think this is also cool because this asset is not the exact same as this one, right? They could have just reused this, right? And then like slapped a new head on him. But this is a actual different asset, which is really cool. And another thing that I actually just noticed for this too, they do a little bit of a blur effect here. You can see that the asset looks a little bit blurry, and not in the bad way where it's like, you know, grainy kind of thing. It actually looks like it has a little bit of blur to it as, you know, the smoke fades and you're kind of coming into focus here. Very, very nice. The smoke effects look good. Obviously, the background looks good. And I didn't even notice this. It's so hard to, like, show you this by going with the frame by frame. But look at the little, like, smoke rifts, I guess you would say. These move, too. These little lines. That is such a nice attention to detail. And then, of course, we have the end of the support memory where the yellow splashes over the screen. Very well done support memory. I have to say, I would definitely have to go back and look at the rest of the support memory animations, but at least from all of the ones that I remember off the top of my head, I think this might be the best one in terms of the animation, honestly. This one really didn't cut any corners. I feel like it had a lot of nice framing, right? The lighting was really nice. The little minimal effects were really good. Even the pose change was just fine. Right? I thought this one was very, very nice, honestly. I like this one a lot. So let's go and see how Cell's main contender, the boy Gohan, stands up to this one. I actually do like this one quite a bit too, a gift from Piccolo. Obviously, this is the infamous close beam. I think that even just looking at this right out the gate, right? This one feels a lot more like a support memory to me, where it's these very simple, like, scenes, right, and these very simple transitions. But even so, I mean, I still think everything looks really nice here. Obviously, this one is a lot more quick than Cell's animation, right? Yeah, see, this is what's interesting. Usually they do it like this for the intro of the support memory, where they have the characters, like, kind of appear over the little glowing film in the background, right? And then the scene kind of fades in. Whereas for Cells, I guess it's just kind of the nature of the scene, right? Or it's just kind of the square and then they have it go in there. But I think it just lends itself well to the animation for sure. So obviously, we have Gohan and Piccolo standing on the lookout. I will say these assets don't look lower quality necessarily, but they do look a lot more akin to like the in-between talking story assets with the thicker black lines on the smaller assets. And I will say, Gohan's face does look a little bit strange here. I don't know if it's the nose or the size of his forehead. But he does look a little goofy here, if I'm being honest, right? He does look a little bit strange. Definitely not too bad. But I definitely still like the way that it looks. I think the lookout floor also looks really good. You do have, obviously, Gohan with these small lip flaps here, and a small nod from Piccolo, right? As he's listening in. That is really small, right? Like, they didn't even need to include that. Look at him. He tilts his head down right there. Very simple, but just kind of, you know, caught by Gohan's words. You know, he got his attention, obviously. Then they cut to Piccolo's face, I believe. Yeah, it's just a quick cut, which, again, this makes more sense for a support memory, right? And I know if it was, like, in a Super Attack animation, I would be going crazy right now. You know, sound like J. Jonah Jameson slandering Spider-Man. But, obviously, for support memory, you want it to be quick. You know, it still should be a good representation of the scene, but obviously these scenes are a lot less action-packed because, of course, for the support memories, the majority of the scenes that they take from are scenes where the characters aren't attacking, or they're standing around having a conversation, or something else is occurring, right? So having cuts like this makes sense. For this one then, of course, we just have Piccolo standing there. He looks fantastic, by the way. Definitely no complaints whatsoever. Piccolo looks great in this shot. And then we cut back to basically the same thing. This is another time where, again, I'm not going to be as critical about this because it is just a support memory and it is not an animation. However, I'm not going to lie. I saw this arm movement a little bit and I was like, yuck! Right? Because it is basically just like, let's count them, right? We can count the poses here. 1, 2, right? So we got 1, 2, 3. And then if you want to count that as 4 when he opens his hand, I guess that would be 4, right? Which is kind of yucky, but at the same time, again, it's a support memory animation. So they don't usually put as much like high quality fluid movement into these as they do for the, you know, other animations. However, I definitely like the change in Piccolo's expression here, and the actual expression that he gives when he's doing the close beam is great. And this is like exactly how I remember it from the anime, right? Like this specific expression, because I remember this scene pretty well, because obviously, you know, I watched it as a youngin, you know, watching Dragon Ball Z Kai on TV. This makes sense, right? And it, well, not just makes sense, it looks good is what I meant to say, right? Like the actual transition of his expression looks very, very nice, right? Simple, easy, and it works. Then, of course, we transition back to the scene where we basically just have Gohan glow for the beginning of this section. This looks very funny out of context. I will say, it is a little bit of a shame because I have seen them do better glow effects. This outline on the glow is kind of yucky. This looks like in a thumbnail for a YouTube video, and I used to do this. Sometimes I even still do. I'm a little bit of a victim of it too, but when you use the kind of yucky outer glow and it kind of makes this outline, but it's sort of a low opacity type of thing, it just doesn't really look that good. Like, I think they just could have either colored Gohan completely white like this, right, and just had him glow a little bit without the little bit of like afterglow, or just don't add the like black outline, or I guess it would be more like a gray outline in this case. I think it would have worked a lot better. Or maybe like soften it up. And I know these lines aren't like hard lines necessarily, right, because obviously they're very like rounded edges. But just don't have as like obvious lines. Just kind of have it like dissipate, you know, into a little bit of a fade there. Alright, so for this, obviously we have the flashes of light, and then we have these very nice frames of the light shining on Piccolo. I like this shot a lot. I think these look really, really good. Shadow looks good too. And then, of course, the white bathes over the screen, and we have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Gohan, standing there. And I like that they actually fade from white rather than just cutting, because I think that works a lot better for this scene. Obviously, we have a little bit of smoke at the bottom, which looks really good, and Gohan standing there. This asset is so good of Gohan here. So good. Obviously, he just moves his hands a little bit, and obviously he changes his face just a tiny bit, right? Nothing too crazy, right? You can see that. Where are we here? As it's coming up, right, he frowns a little bit, and then he basically just opens his mouth into a smile with his hands moving. Again, simple, and I think it works very, very well for a support memory, for sure. And this shot is very, very nice. I think that's another thing that these support memories do very well, is that besides this one with this particular shot, right, which is kind of like for me personally, I think one thing that's great about these support memories is they do what Dokkan does best very well. That sounded like I just said the same thing like twice, but what I mean by that is Dokkan does close-up shots really well, right? Like these close-up shots of the characters are always done super well in the super attacks, and they always tend to focus on that in the support memories, and I think they absolutely do it very, very well. So that is going to do it for this video. I do quite like Gohan's. I do think that Cell's is definitely still the best animated that I've ever seen. I do still really like Gohan's though. Again, for these support memories, I can't be too critical of them because, you know, they do what they're supposed to do well. It's a quick animation of the scene, supposed to be a good representation of it, right? It's basically like an intro to the battle without actually having the intro animation, because obviously characters have that now, but you get my point. Right? So I think it works pretty well for both of these. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely let me know if you want me to take a look at some more support memories. I may try and do these like 2 at a time, just because obviously, you know, one of these videos would end up being pretty short with just doing one support memory at a time. So let me know what you think about these. Obviously, there isn't as much to analyze with these because, of course, they're so much shorter than, you know, a normal essay, and you don't really see them as often as a normal essay either. So, you know, of course they're a little bit different, but I think it's always interesting to analyze Dokkan's different animations from different perspectives, because obviously they're all trying to sort of achieve a little bit of a different thing. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.